Since the year 2000, 112,914 UFO sightings have been reported in America, but only 5% reported. So the real number is over 2 million UFO sightings.
Did it really in the flags? I thought would mark a straight swearing.
Let's see if I can get it on camera.
Can you zoom yours? Yours zooms.
No, it doesn't.
All right, there it is. I got it on
Oh
camera.
my God!
Can you zoom in more?
Ah,
There's a cloud.
you know
And
what
there's a
there is?
flying
There's
saucer.
no strings on it, no ropes on it.
The UFO phenomenon is real. The real question is it alien?
No lo creo, güey, no mames.
Se ve perfecto,
No mames.
se ve perfecto.
Güey, no
Órale.
mames, puta, estás grabando, cabrón, no
Sí,
mames.
está el poquito
Güey,
prendido.
Puta,
O sea, se ve
ve esa madre,
padrísimo,
¿qué pedo,
bárbaro.
cabrón? No mames, ¿qué? O sea, no es un avión esa madre, ¿qué pedo? No mames, cabrón.
No lo veo.
No. A ver,
Se metió atrás de ese edificio, espérame.
And what about experiencers? An experiencer is someone who has had personal contact with the phenomena. Which brings us to our guest, James Iandoli. An experiencer with a story to tell.
You know, that event was fascinating to me and compelling to me. So, like, there was no question in my mind at that point that was some kind of UFO encounter or interaction. I was looking, you know, I was just awake and I was looking, and I saw what somebody would call like a shadow entity, but it had like a very soft glow to it. In the community, in the UFO community, you know, for better or worse, a lot of times when you have experiencers, and listen, people, I'm coming from the point of view from an experiencer, so I'm not down talking experiencers, please. That some people, they get gassed up, right? They have, and I'm not, and I understand it, right? I understand exactly why, because they've been personally touched and affected.
Welcome to the show, brother. Thanks for joining us on Vetted.
Hey, Patrick, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So let the people know your name, you know, your show, and then we'll kind of, you know, dive into a little bit and get to know you.
Right. My name is James Iandoli, and I have a YouTube channel and podcast, and kind of like an overall multimedia project called Engaging the Phenomenon, where, of course, I'm exploring the UFO phenomenon, but I also tend to get into the deep end into what people call consciousness studies and anomalous experiences as well.
Love it. Well, I've seen some interviews with you recently to prepare for this interview, and I know you've had your own, because this isn't everybody. Everyone that covers this topic hasn't had a personal experience. I'm one of those people. Not just the people watching, but also the people covering. I think a lot of people just assume, oh, they're covering this because they've had a personal experience. But, you know, a lot of people haven't. And I'm one of those. But a lot of people have, including yourself. And I've heard you, you know, tell the story here and there. But there's definitely going to be a lot of people, James, on this channel who haven't heard of you yet. And I would love, if you're cool with it, if you wouldn't mind telling us, you know, your personal experience. You know, I'm sure you've had several, so maybe like the initial one, you know, what started this all for you?
Yeah, see, that's the big question. I mean, that's in retrospect, you look at things differently because, I had experiences when I was a kid, when I was younger, that at the time I had no frame of reference for those experiences, so I didn't consider it associated with the UFO phenomenon. Kind of at that age, I was too young. So maybe when I was 5 or 6 years old, I had a series of experiences with, some kind of non-human intelligence that I still to this day I can't say it's definitively tied into the UFO phenomenon, but in the UFO and UAP conversation, there's always talks about non-human intelligence and entities, and predominantly through means of like a telepathic communication. So, what happened to me early on with these experiences was that I was, typical, very young in my room late at night, and I heard in my mind, because I was looking, I was just awake and I was looking, and I saw what somebody would call like a shadow entity, but it had like a very soft glow to it. It wasn't just like a typical shadow or a shadow entity. And I kind of froze. But as soon as that happened, I heard a voice, not just in my head. This is what's very hard to describe. I heard it throughout my entire body. And the first thing I heard was, "He can see us." And I really started with,
Jeez.
yeah, I really was beginning to panic at that point. And I saw this entity moving and then collapse into an orb. And
oh, wow.
I saw other ones, but I wasn't like counting them. But for some reason in my mind, I have the number 3 imprinted as, there were 3 of them there.
Okay.
But again, I heard kind of like, it's really hard to describe this. Even though I heard the entity through, in my body in that sense, I heard audibly, like what it sounded like audibly was almost like gibberish. And
like speaking in tongues sort of thing,
this is a perfect example, is if you ever saw the movie The Knowing with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
Okay, the Whisper people.
Okay.
So whoever made that movie, I have to assume, I don't know if they did research or whatever, but that's exactly what it was like.
Answer me!
It's the same director who did iRobot.
Yeah, that was a great movie too.
Yeah.
But the audible sounded almost like gibberish, like in that movie. But there, in my mind, in my body, it was absolutely crystal clear. No, there was no room for question or interpretation.
Oh, wow.
It was just bam, and that was frightening. And that happened to me.
What else did they say besides they can hear us?
So I was trying to block it. They said he can see us.
Or he can see us, sure.
Yeah, I was trying to block them out. So at that point I was like,
you were terrified, right?
Yeah,
I get it.
Quite literally.
Wow.
And after that, like when I saw movies with like I can't remember the exact movie, but like ghosts in kids' rooms, I would think maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But I have to say this comes full circle because, again, and I had other anomalous experiences in that kind of time frame and a little bit afterwards, like, so I guess you can dub me experiencer. And I understand the meaning and the use for that term, right? But I don't like exclusivity. I don't like that idea because some people get into that, but. Just to point to particular phenomena, I remember I had spontaneous out of body experiences, just like the kind of thing. I think it's very typical. And when people say, "Oh, they never had that," I'm like, really? Because it's not anything crazy. it is profound when you consider the implications, but it's nothing to me that was unusual, that, you know, you're kind of in between awake and sleep. And as far as your perception goes, like, you haven't fallen asleep yet. There's no lapse in the consciousness. Yet all of a sudden you start floating above your body, and then it's like so typical. You look down and you see yourself, and like, I'm like, oh shit, that's me, and then boom, you're back in, right?
Wow.
So that I mean, I thought everybody had that. And
a lot of people talk about that for sure. There's no question.
And to me, I don't really think that's too uncommon.
Sure.
But
no, I agree with you.
But again, it is in itself profound.
When you said exclusivity, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so this may be something that we get into along the talk, or we do it now. I don't know where it fits best, but you know, there tends to be a kind of, I don't want to say people put themselves on a pedestal, but it's difficult to describe, and it's something that I've seen a lot because for a long time I was an experiencer disguised as a researcher. I didn't talk about my experiences for many years because I didn't want to. I mean,
sure.
But in the community, in the UFO community, you know, for better or worse, a lot of times when you have experiencers, and listen, people, I'm coming from the point of view from an experiencer, so I'm not down talking experiencers, please.
Of course.
That some people, they get gassed up, right? They have, and I'm not, and I understand it, right? I understand exactly why, because they've been personally touched and affected. So, but there's a kind of inclination to feel like you're part of an exclusive club, right?
Okay,
kind of thing, or entitled, or, you know, kind of on a pedestal a little bit. And so I don't know if this is an effect of the contact, if the UFO phenomenon selects individuals that might get like that to kind of propagate whatever communication or message that they might be trying to filter culturally through society through the interaction, as, you know, Jacques Vallée has proposed in Messengers of Deception and the like. So, and again, it's, you know, I could give examples, but I don't want to single people out and stuff.
Sure.
I don't.
So basically you're saying, like, there are certain people that potentially sort of like, I was chosen, like the NHI chose me for X reason. I've heard Gary Nolan talk about something in the brain, right?
The Corday nucleus. I wrote the original. Yeah, I wrote the original article on that with Gary. With, you know, he wrote me privately. Yeah, the Corday pertainment, and along.
That's it.
Yeah. So
I always get that word wrong. That's why I never say it.
Corday pertainment, yeah, and it's a specific area in the basal ganglia that's associated with intuition, that he found that with Dr. Kit Green, who ran the Weird Desk for the CIA in the 80s, studying UFOs, remote viewing, psychic phenomena, anomalous phenomena, and other kind of stuff, probably kind of Havana syndrome kind of stuff, which ties into this in some strange way. But I understand exactly why people feel like that, because you're always wondering, why me, right? Sure. And you kind of are, you are in a sense among a lesser group of people. But at the same time, I think the problem arises when people think that just because they've had an interaction that they have all the answers.
100%.
Yeah, because again, I've talked about in my experiences that I felt my interactions, I'm going to get into the other ones later, were positive, right? They didn't seem, other than the ones when I was younger and I was terrified, I was never threatened, right? You
were probably just terrified because it's new and you're young, and this is you know, strange. That doesn't necessarily mean they were being threatening to you. Correct. To terrify you on purpose, right? So yeah, that's interesting.
It wasn't threatening in that manner. I don't discount people who've had negative experiences by any means. I can't speak to that because it hasn't happened to me. But I'm if I'm willing to talk about my experiences and say this is what it is, I have to listen to other people's as well, as equally on equal ground. But some people believe that they have the message, they know exactly what the phenomenon is, and I think that's a mistake for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't know if we're truly capable of completely understanding the phenomenon. I think it's going to take like everybody to even scratch the surface of that, right? Yeah. And that's kind of maybe even the point of some of the interactions, but also the idea that some of the non-human intelligences or some of the intelligences associated with the UFO phenomenon may be misleading us, may intentionally or as a way to gradually acclimate us to the point where we can finally understand, where they're taking us through phases of understanding, kind of like Jacques Vallée's metasystem, that they're kind of slowly teaching. Is that like a slow teaching system to
indoctrinating us in some way, or
to evolve our consciousness?
So
there were airships in the 1890s, and and that went from airships, and then there's Foo Fighters, and then there's flying saucers, and then now there's UAP, and it's like our perception has our perception has gradually been expanding from it's gods, it's angels, it's aliens from another planet, to it's interdimensionals, to it's time travelers, to it's ultra terrestrials, to it's could be anything now. And I don't know if that's intentional on behalf of the phenomenon, or it's just us slowly evolving in our thought and thinking to the point where we're
looking at it differently. And describing it differently, right? Just based on
their cultural lenses,
our filters, right? Our modern filters.
Yeah. So I mean, that's part of it. And again, I think, and there's also, and again, I came into this with my own experiences, is that there's definitely room for error in interpretation. I can interpret a contact experience one way and be absolutely sure of it, right? Which I was at first. At first, I'm going to explain some of these experiences. I took literally. I took them literally. I didn't even question like, oh, wait, actually, I took everything literally, and I thought I didn't even think to question it. It was only because I'm a meditation practitioner, and I'm not a philosopher, but I'm often contemplating kind of things, trying to like look at things at a deeper level.
I guess I'm confused when you say literal. Like, what do you mean you took them literally?
Okay,
like what does that even mean?
Right. Okay. Exactly. So those experiences I described were when I was younger.
Yeah.
But then when I got to, it was 2007, so I'm 20 years old. And, in that gap, I had on and off periods, right? Of like
activity or.
Yeah.
Okay. I see.
Nothing after those I didn't have anything on that level where I was seeing entities again. Not like that.
Okay.
Things in the sky, right? And just anomalous cognition events, right? Where different kinds of like dreams and kind of different things
deja
like that.
Vus and just
right. So that whole kind of spectrum.
Things. Yeah,
right?
I got you.
And the whole kind of like you're thinking about somebody and they call you.
I see what you mean.
Just very subtle psychic events or whatever. And again, I'm not I have no gift in any psi or anything like that, in my own opinion. Everything that's happened to me is literally circumstantial, right place, right time kind of thing, in my opinion.
Would you say random?
Yes. Spontaneous. I wasn't like, hey, let me try to do this. And there's nothing like that. It was just spontaneous. And I'm just like this helpless witness, like, wow, what is it?
You're not asking for it. It's just happening to you.
But every time it did happen, it always stood out to me. And I was like, wow, what is this? Right.
Sure.
So by the time I reached 20 years old, because of the earlier events, I was already investigating UFOs. I was investigating psychic phenomenon. I was seeing like the late night, TV things on,
So this is 2007, right? You're saying?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it.
So, but in that time period, I've been researching UFOs and stuff already because anything kind of strange caught my attention because of the earlier experiences.
Sure.
And so all of a sudden one day, and this is in 2007, I'm at work and I was working an overnight shift, and my coworker comes out and he's like a porter, whatever, steward, he's cleaning the area. And he doesn't know that I have any interest in any kind of weird stuff, because at work, especially this point in time, I'm 20 years old. It's very kind of work casual. Hey, how you doing? How's the family?
Yeah.
And this guy comes out and he's like, hey, did you hear about the UFOs in Mexico? And I'm thinking like, he doesn't know that I'm interested in any of this stuff. So it was really weird because this guy was kind of very like, not into any kind of weird stuff. He very simple, straight, awesome guy, great guy, but never a discussion on any kind of like strange subjects. And so I thought that was weird, but I just I was like, oh, it's time to leave. I get out, I go home, I drive home, and I go to sleep. And when I go to sleep, as I'm dreaming, it's a dream. And in my dream, I see this kind of, I just like, when you wake up in the dream, or when the dream starts, however you want to say it, I'm driving and I just see this orange kind of UFO, maybe like 20 feet above my car in this dream at nighttime. And I'm driving down one of my old streets and I can feel like electrical pulses in the dream from this, kind of like electrical orange UFO that's like right above the car. And it's in a dream, so I'm super reactive. I'm just like trying to get away from it. I don't even know why, right? I'm just like, holy shit. So I'm speeding, trying to get away from it. And I just can't get it. It's just like staying with me the whole time, and it's pointless. And then I just, snap up out of my dream. I wake up and I'm like coming to like, wow, that was freaking weird. And at this point, I wasn't even thinking about what the guy said. I hadn't connected the two at all until one of my family members comes in and says, hey, did you hear about the UFOs in Mexico? And then at that point, it just like hit me. And I'm like, screw this. This is bullshit. Something's going on here. Wow. So I go out of my house and, I was going to drive down the street to this Chinese restaurant. It's a Chinese takeout place. It's right down the street. I used to always go there either, usually after the gym or when I woke up. So I just get in my car and I start driving and I'm like, this is messed up basically. So as I'm driving, I didn't even drive, 300 or 400 feet. And it's probably late spring, early summer, and clear blue sky. It's probably between 3:30 and 4 p.m. And again, perfectly clear blue sky. And I'm driving and I look in the sky because it's right in front of me. And I see a fireball just stationary hanging there in the sky. And I just think in my head, like, holy shit, that's a UFO. And as soon as I thought that, it just starts moving. And I'm like freaking out. But I'm very excited. I was just like super excited because I'm like, what? It just was moving. It was just I say fireball because it wasn't just like an orange orb. There was like a organic or like a living quality to it. And like a fireball, right? And there was no like flames coming off. It was completely contained, and it was just gliding across. And I tried to chase it.
Like on foot, you mean?
No, in my car because I was driving.
Oh, yeah, okay,
and, I'm just like driving, and I'm like, oh my god, I got it. And it just like slowly went, and to the point where it got over the horizon past the trees and everything, and my view was obstructed, and then I just couldn't find it anymore.
You couldn't keep up with it, right?
Yeah, it was just, I mean, because of the direction it was going. It wasn't moving fast, but it was just the direction that it was going. And, again, all the obstructions, and it's going in a straight path, and I'm just like trying to go through streets and stuff.
Sure. How big you think this thing is?
So that's the thing about it. It was low. It was not like super up in the air. I'm squinting at it. Like, it was freaking apparent. And I can't say how big it was because it's hard to make that kind of judgment. I mean, 30, 40, 50 feet. I don't know, but it was not. Yeah. I mean, again, I really can't make that judgment because I don't know the distance, but it was not like far.
I mean, was it
sky.
taking up half the sky?
No.
So it's
like
not that big. So we can at least determine, right? So, and it wasn't the size of a fly, right? It clearly wasn't that big. So it's
maybe if you were looking at a dime,
yeah, in the sky,
it was like maybe half of that size if you were to put it in the diameter.
Got it.
Right.
Got it.
So it was big. It was much bigger than a planet or anything like that you would see in the sky. Much bigger.
And you said it was low.
It was low. Yeah, it was
low.
low.
To you. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how low exactly, but it was not. Again, it wasn't like far out in the sky.
I mean, you've seen planes fly around that area,
right.
So you could judge it's below that.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
More than likely.
Right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
where drones fly, the same air,
a little bit lower.
Area
yeah.
Or lower,
I would say a little bit
area.
even lower than that.
Or even lower. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. It was low.
That's crazy.
And
any sound?
No, nothing. Not at all. And again, there's and this is 2007. There weren't drones like that, and drones don't look like these, like a living fireball kind of thing. And again, the whole thing that hit me like a ton of bricks was not that this. I mean, of course, yeah, wow, a UFO in broad daylight, that's cool, but the like the crux of it all, the thing that hit me the hardest was the entire sequence of events that happened leading up to it. That's, how do you explain that, right? Like, I can
comprehend.
Well,
and all that, yeah.
Right. Like, I can comprehend, okay, there's aliens in a ship and they're flying here. But how do you, like, I can try to kind of conceptualize that there's some kind of non-human intelligence in some kind of craft that are moving above me for whatever reason, right? I don't know why.
Sure.
But how the hell do you explain the synchronicity, right? What Jacques Vallée and Dr. J. Allen Hynek dubbed high strangeness, because the probability of that kind of synchronicity and coincidence is just not.
That's interesting.
Not possible, basically, by any means. So,
well, do you think that just that UFO in Mexico sighting was just big news that people were just talking about it?
I don't know.
That's why your coworker brought it up, because it's like
I tried to look it up, and I didn't find an exact thing where I could point out that was like, that's the one.
That's interesting.
It's possible.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
No, it is possible, but between that and the dream, right? Between that, the dream, and then even if there are UFOs in Mexico, why the hell am I having a UFO experience the following day or whatever it was? Myself.
Did anyone else see that same one that you heard about? Like, did anyone else corroborate that? Like that?
No, I don't know of anybody. I mean, but we're gonna get to an event later where I was like sure that disclosure was happening in real time during one of my experiences that my family members got to witness.
Wow.
But the whole thing is like, the whole series of events is like from, two people that have no association mentioning this UFO in Mexico thing, which, okay, that's one thing, but then the dream, and then the broad daylight sighting, right? The chances of all those things happening in the way it did is just not, it doesn't make sense, right?
You don't think it could have been like you're driving, right? And front windshields have huge, thick glass.
No, this thing, like, not at all. Like, I could determine, I could determine the difference.
You can see it's not.
It was not a glare
on your window or a glare.
No. It was stationary, and then it was clearly moving through the sky. And as I'm moving, the angle of the glass is moving while I'm moving, trying to observe it and catch up with it, and it's staying its track, right? It's not like bouncing off the way a light would is with angles like that. So again, that after that, I was, that event was fascinating to me and compelling to me.
Sure.
So like there was no question in my mind at that point that was some kind of UFO encounter or interaction.
Yeah.
Which at the time I wasn't even really thinking of it as an interaction, right? I still had the mindset of, oh, it's a sighting, right? But this interaction component is completely important and I think crucial to the entire thing. Which I mean, I'll say it here. I guess I haven't really publicly announced it before, but I am working on a book that is going to exclusively focus on that component of the UFO phenomenon. So you got an exclusive right there, Patrick.
I love it. That's awesome. So you're saying like sighting versus interaction in that difference.
And
right?
which sightings, what's
that's cool too. What sightings were actually interactions?
Right. Well, sightings are random, them. Right? What sightings are random? And I say that because like even look
that's interesting.
I'm gonna get into the later experiences, but like just to pivot for a second is David Fravor's thing was not a sighting with the Tic Tac. It was an interaction. It was interacting with him and the other pilots, right?
That's a good point. That's a good distinction. You're right.
It wasn't a random. I mean, again, could they have come across each other random? Maybe, right? But to the point where they made contact, right, where their awareness of each other became apparent, they began to interact. He's circling and it's responding to him. That's, by definition, an interaction.
You're right.
And you can argue that there's interactions going on different levels of your awareness, from conscious to subconscious to, people getting to downloads and all that stuff.
Well, it's all interaction if you think about it, right? It's all in interaction, but
how much of that is intentional
interaction exactly
on behalf of the phenomenon, and how much of it is random?
Wow,
I think
that's cool. I'm excited about this book. That's really cool. Like, how far along are you? Is this something you've been working on for years? And like you can look at it that way, that all my experiences and research have led up to that point. Sure.
I can't say how far out it is, but I've 100% started it and I've been working on it, and I'm not rushing it. So it is probably going to take a year or two. I've never written a book, so I couldn't tell you, but I chip away at it. I'm chipping away at it.
So this will be your first book.
Correct. Right.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
This is, dude, how cool is that? That is so cool. Your family must be super excited about that too.
Well, they actually are. Yeah, they are. Because they've seen the stuff. They've had they've been there for a few events that I had.
Wow.
And so
what a great angle to take on this book too. I got to say, that's a cool angle. I also want to give credit to my good friend and colleague. He's kind of anonymous in the community, but he's known as the Hermetic Penetrator, and he's written some of the best articles. He's written some of the best articles on the subject in the last few years. Oh, and wow! I've never heard of this guy.
He wrote an article called
maybe I have. I just didn't know it.
You might, yeah. He did a whole article on UFO baiting, right? And it's Lighthouse in the Dark. And I'll send it to you after this. You can link it in the description. It's excellent.
Thank you. Let's do that, please.
And he also co-authored, I want to say an article, but it's a book almost, with my friend Daniel Elizondo, otherwise known as Megapoint, called Loose Threads. And again,
any relation to Luis Elizondo?
No. As far as I know, no. Unless he's hiding it from me.
Elizondo's.
No. Yeah,
it is a common. It's not super common, but it's it's not an uncommon Latin name,
right? But Daniel Elizondo and my good friend, they're both my good friends. The Hermetic Penetrator wrote this it's like almost like a book. It should be a book out there in print called Loose Threads, and it breaks down.
What a name. The Penetrator. I don't know about that. That's like, he might have to,
I know, right?
I don't know, right? That's like
that's
a little
intentional. You heard that? The Hermetic Penetrator, he's going to watch this. So
I'm just, I'm just saying.
We call
but
him
you
Hermes.
know,
We call him Hermes after.
okay, maybe I have heard this before. Then okay, well, but no, but it does make you remember the name.
Yeah.
So you know, from that standpoint,
but you
I'll give it
you
to him.
have. I mean, really, when it comes, you have to read his writing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super excited. I mean, I'm excited to
and
check this out.
It's really excellent stuff. But just to
So shout out to
again,
him. He's helping with this book, or gave you the
he's
idea
definitely
for it, or
me and him we've been bouncing ideas around for years, and like he's kind of like my intellectual shadow boxer, and you know,
I love that. I'm stealing that. I'm stealing
we
that. James.
constantly
What a
are
great-
bouncing
I love
ideas
that.
off, and you know, Socratic
Sure.
dialogue or dialectic and that kind of thing, and training
Is
ideas.
the book going to be set up like exciting and let's look at it, exciting and let's look, or interaction, or you know what I mean, like events styled, or still working on that, still the framing of it at all?
So the way I'm doing it is I'm kind of just doing it through my eyes, right? So it's my journey between contact, interaction, and research, and and my insights, and I guess you can say hypothesis of the interactions along.
So your personal story will be in this too.
It's not going to be about me per se, but it's woven into it.
Got it. Love it.
Because
That's awesome.
I was trying to write it dry, and that's just not me, and it's not my style. So it was very unnatural, and I couldn't.
You didn't want all the attention on you.
I don't like that. Again, that exclusivity thing. I'm not a
You're
fan
very
of
consistent. I'll say it's a very, I can tell that about you. You're not like looking for the spotlight.
Well, because
you know what I mean?
Again, that's, I don't like, other than doing this stuff, I'm like highly introvertive.
Sure.
You know, like I'm a super introvert. It's hard to tell just because I've gotten used to doing this kind of thing, but otherwise I'm just like, I like to do meditation and like, I don't like to be extroverted if I don't have to.
Sure. I get it. Totally. I get it.
So but I'm going to do the book in that format. And
love this. This is so exciting.
Well, because from the very beginning,
cool.
my thing has been like, I want people to focus on the work, right? Even other personalities that are out there, like we should not hinge on personalities, and maybe we can get into that later. But like, you have this person, and everybody's spouting their opinions about this person's a grifter, this person's this person's this person's that, this person knows everything, this person we should follow everything they say. And it's like, you focus on the work, not the person. When you come to the point where you're discussing personalities, you've lost the track. You're on the wrong track. You're missing the point. And not to say that there's not a place for where we should recognize who's who and who's doing what, right? Like we should be cognizant of our surroundings.
Sure.
But that should not consume our focus and research, and that shouldn't be the whole thing. This is not TMZ or the Inquirer. It's not. Yeah. It's become like a popularity, like a Gossip Girls thing. I don't know. Like the way that people are always commenting on the Kardashians. Like there's an element of that in the UFO community now. It's like, what? Like really? That's what you like to do? But it is what it is. And I mean,
focus on the word, the claims, the work of what's happening. Yeah. So you're right.
I mean, we're all people and we all interact and we all have our opinions, but at the end of the day, like, what are you in this for? So
well said. What is there a working title for the book?
I have the title, but I can't share because it's
okay. Yeah, fair enough.
It's the whole thing, right?
It's well, that's cool. So it's a profound title then. Like it's a powerful title.
It is. I like it. It's something that I had been contemplating this title for years because I was just originally going to be an article, and again, the Hermetic Penetrator. Me and him were kicking around ideas because we're talking about introducing this kind of element into the conversation, discussing it, and rather than because the CE5 is a popular term now, and and kind of if you go meta on that, it's contact modalities is a broader aspect of contact, but I just want to
Oh,
introduce it
interesting.
in a kind of a different way where it's
Sure.
so.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Love that.
So,
Love
yeah.
that. Love this
But
book's coming out. So cool.
I kind of went off on a rant from there.
No, that's okay. Well, I had questions about the,
Yeah.
you bring this up. Honestly, I love that you're looking deeper at the idea of a sighting and what does it mean and zooming out and saying, okay, it's an interaction, but is this intentional? Is it random? Is it, why is this happening?
Well, and then
I love that.
Is the is psychic phenomenon involved? Are synchronicities involved? And if they are, how is that even possible?
The tangential surrounding
and,
events also. Right?
Yeah, and also,
so
but is that just the UFO phenomenon, right? Or is it really that the UFO phenomenon is just happens to be one spoke in the kind of mix of things where all these other things come into play, and the UFO, I say sometimes UFO is like a bridge between physics and metaphysics, because you have these physical objects that you can record them on gun camera footage and cameras. You can track them on radar, and they're physical, real objects as far as I can tell. You can collect them and acquire them at a crash retrieval event, allegedly. But at the same time, they're performing feats which we would consider metaphysical. Again, they're
even the craft itself, right? David Grush talked about a craft that once inside the craft, it's the size of a football field, but on the outside, it's 40, 50 feet, which coincidentally is about the same size of the craft you might have seen at your 2007. Right. So that size comes up a lot, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, so you have a physical object that's physically, as far as we can tell, demonstrating super physical feats.
Sure.
Right. Again, the 5 or 6 observables that Lou Elizondo pointed out, basically, like you have anti-gravity, the low observability, aka they can cloak themselves or disappear instantaneously, just pop in here, and disappear here, and go like all these kind of things. So you have to question, how are they doing that, right? And when you start to ask that, you have to expand what you consider physics, because they are physically doing it, as far as we can tell, in a physical universe, right?
Sure. But at least it appears as such.
Correct. Right. And as far as our tracking systems, our radars, our satellites, and everything that's tracking it, saying that this is happening physically, this is happening really, and that's my point. Like, it appears as if it's happening, or it is happening, and why? Because if you take a laser from standing on right, but
and
then
you zoom it across the sky, it goes really fast, and you would think if that thing's in the sky and moving across, there's no way it could do that.
Right.
But that's not what's happening, right? So is it that these things appear as if they're doing that, or are they?
Correct.
I guess that's part of what you're looking into, which is super cool. I love this.
Yeah. So cool. And then you have to wonder, is like, what is physical reality at that point? And that's when you get into the consciousness thing.
I love it. I'm all about that stuff, man. At least talking about it. I love
it. Because the ATIP slide, right? Slide 9, which was found.
Slide 9.
It says, which my good friend, Twitter user Jay is his alias, was the one who kind of leaked that by accident. Because he.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's the one who wrote the other article on the caudate putainment on Gary Nolan's work with me. He co-authored. We both put out the article on the same day. It was kind of like we planned it that way. But he leaked Slide 9, Twitter user Jay, and he found it on Christopher Mellon's site. I don't think it was supposed to be there and be accessible, but he downloaded everything and then he put it out there. And then we were like, holy shit, maybe we shouldn't have done that, because he, it ended up that Alex Dietrich's name was on one of the reports, and so we pulled it, but then somebody else was kind of circulating around. It was too late at that point, because she wasn't known at that time, and we were trying to protect people's private information. It's a whole thing.
She hadn't come out in the 60 Minutes interview yet.
Yeah, this is 2018 maybe.
Wow. And for those that may not know, just as a quick summary, what does Slide 9 say?
Wow, I usually have it with me when I do talks, because Slide 9 is talking about kind of the capacity or the things that the Department of Defense has identified that UAP are capable of doing, and it talks about like psychotronics, basically psychic influence, cognitive human interface, which is similar to CE5.
Communicating
correct.
mentally with the craft and potentially even controlling them.
Right, or at least being able to non-locally influence them, right? And so one way or another.
What a great way to put it. I like how you put that.
Yeah, either way, profound, and in this slide, it was
Definitely
put as like
profound.
a threat capability because we don't know how this can affect us, right? If it means harm to us, that's not a good thing. So that it's a DoD briefing slide, so it's going to have that angle. But it's talking about the transmedium capability, the ability to basically move through solid objects, and all this stuff. So everybody look up slide 9. My friend Twitter user Jay also did an article.
Is it still
slide.
Available
Yes,
online?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
then I'll put it over the screen and I'll cover
it. It's profound. And then on the bottom of the slide it says
because what am I saying? I've seen it. I've seen stuff about it. Yeah.
On the bottom of the slide it says what was once phenomena is now quantum mechanics. So saying like we have an idea of how all this is operating now.
Like a lot of things. Eventually it became real science instead of fantasy or you're crazy, Galileo.
Yeah, but I should get back to the discussion I was having about my experiences, because I'm remembering you said what do you mean by taking it literally? So
that too. Yeah, let's get back to that question.
Yeah, no, because it's an important one, especially when we had the conversation about experiencers and exceptionalism and that kind of thing. Because what if we're wrong about our interpretation? Even if we're not being misled intentionally by the UFO phenomenon, what if the way that we're interpreting the experience is wrong, right? It's just simple.
Dude, James, I've been saying that on Vetted.
Really?
I have. Yes.
You're a good
dude. For a long time. I've been saying, how do we even know that what we're hearing or feeling or thinking is
so
right?
let me get to this. So after that daylight fireball interaction or sighting, maybe 2 or 2.5 months later, I ended up getting into a car accident, and so I didn't realize this for many years. But the place where I got into the car accident was exactly where I had the fireball sighting.
No way.
Wow. Like what's crazy? Like it took me years to even put that together.
Sure.
And I was explaining the experience to another experiencer, and then I was like, holy shit, that's the same exact place. I know, and it gets crazier than that. So when I had this kind of this car accident, I had I call it a trauma-induced out-of-body experience, because it wasn't a near-death experience, but at the time I thought it was, because I remember driving, and then I fell asleep driving because I was working all these crazy shifts and overnights and whatever.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Don't do it. Don't.
Yeah, of course.
Get
some rest. Pull over, right?
I still find myself in with lack of sleep, but because of everything. But it's you got to be super.
Sure.
I'm ultra careful. So when the way that this kind of I call it a trauma-induced out-of-body experience, that it simulated like a near-death experience, happened, was all of a sudden the way the experience started, I guess I had crashed or whatever. I didn't even realize I'd crashed because I fell asleep.
Yeah.
And I was face to face with this like a being of light, right? Like a light being. It looked strange. I didn't see feet. It tapered down, and it had arms and a neck and a head and a chest and all that. And it was like maybe like a whitish blue, and but I felt, but this is not like in like physical reality as far as I can tell. I was in some kind of like consciousness.
This is after the wreck, right? You've wrecked, and this is your
As-
memory.
Correct. Right. Well, I mean, it wasn't a memory. It was like I was going through the experience kind of thing. Like I was conscious and aware the entire time. It wasn't dreamlike in the sense where I had a narrative in my consciousness and awareness while this whole thing's going on. Like I was cognizant and aware. That's why it wasn't dreamlike in a sense where I'm watching a dream. I was like,
but you were sleeping, right, when you were driving. So
yes.
you went from sleeping to instantly awake, having this moment.
Right. I mean, at least if I was like sleeping or whatever, I was aware of whatever this dream or experience
Got it.
out of body experience thing was. So I was face to face with this entity, and for some reason in my awareness, I had like no question. I felt that this entity was not separate from me. And I heard this like amazing crystalline, like angelic orchestra, right? And it was amazing. And then all of a sudden it went, I guess it just, like, I don't know. It just, I went straight from that to bam, I'm above the scene of the accident. Right. And I'm looking down at the whole accident, and I see an ambulance there and all that, and the car. And I'm like, man, so this is it, huh? Like I thought I was dead because I'm looking down at the accident and I'm not in my body and I'm aware of it. Right.
Yeah.
And, but I felt like totally cool with it. I was not like, there was no regret or panic or nothing. It was just totally cool, man. Like equanimity is what people would call that meditative state or whatever. And I was totally fine with it, man. And then after a few moments of that is when bam, I'm in my body. I wake up in my body and I'm like, holy shit, I'm alive. But this is the craziest part, right? Is that the point that I was at, where I'm looking down at the accident, is exactly the vantage point of where the fireball was. And that really messed me up. Yeah.
What if the fireball was someone else that was having that same moment somewhere in your little area?
Or was that my conscious awareness from the future? I like the questions I mean, who knows, right? Or was that?
I don't know. I'm
some kind of non-human intelligence.
Well, what I'm saying is you could be a fireball right now for somebody else.
Correct.
Does that make sense? Looking at you, you're that fireball looking down at your accident. Oh man, that's crazy.
But that's just one question, because I'm not saying that's what it is. I have no idea.
Of course.
So what the hell does that even mean? That gives me like 1,000 questions, right?
Absolutely.
And so the more that I think about these experiences, the less that I know, and the more I'm like, what the?
Well, the light being, you saw an actual being with a face and a skin color, and you know, were they speaking to you?
No, there was no talking, no nothing,
no reaching out their hands, no, they were just present.
Correct. And there was no.
Were they moving, or were they a statue?
I mean, there was not movement, but it was not like a statue.
So you saw them blinking their eyes or something?
No, there was no blinking, and it wasn't skin. It was literally light.
Oh wow! So crazy.
And again, there was just like a state of knowing
from the shadow being, right?
Way
light, dark,
completely different. Completely different.
But that contrast is so interesting, though.
Completely different.
Yeah. Wow. And you didn't feel, and you felt comfort with the light being, but terror with the shadow beings, which is interesting. Now, granted, I know you were younger,
right?
But there's something to that.
Well,
there's something about light, and
also,
it's profound, right? You feel comfort from that.
Yeah, but I also have to say the shadow beings, like as far as I can tell, they were in my physical reality, where I had my senses, my emotions, and everything. This thing was a different.
That's a fair point.
It was a different quality of awareness.
A different interaction.
Yeah.
Right.
And
wow.
Yeah, and there you go, interaction, right? Which is key to the book. Yeah. But so that was such a profound experience, because the when I said I was totally cool and I felt equanimity, when I woke up and came to, I'm like, holy shit, I'm alive. But there was a part of that experience that never left me. That experience completely changed me, right? I did not walk away the same person from that event. Even just my physical sense was not the same. People say high vibration and all that kind of new age stuff, but I felt like a buzzing, right? That stood with me for many months after this event occurred. But so the next day I get out of the hospital. I didn't have any like serious injury to me, right? But I hit my head and had a concussion, and therefore had this experience for whatever reason, right? Because again, it was not.
Maybe that's where the buzzing's coming from. You had a concussion.
Maybe, I don't know. But it was.
Which is terrifying, by the way. So I'm glad you're okay from that.
Yeah, thank God, right? No, because I literally walk away from that, and I was like, oh my God. And this is going to get into the next experience. Like, I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so lucky to be alive. I'm so lucky to be living this life. Like, what a gift. What an absolute gift that I have.
Every day's a gift.
Yeah. That I can live here, right? Like, I mean, that I even exist at all is a miracle, right?
Sure.
So
that's true.
And all the vast space of like dead planets out there, we're here living, and we're alive, and we're sentient, and we have the capacity to love and to have family and to enjoy things and share things and do UFO podcasts. No, but you know what I mean? Like, everything is like completely a miracle in that sense.
You're right.
Because we could just be non-existent, I guess. So the next day I get out of the hospital, and I'm just kind of coming back to reality, so to speak. And by the nighttime, I'm just like in my room, I'm cleaning my room, and I'm just like thankful to be alive. I'm like, wow. Even just to clean, I was cleaning my room, and I'm like, this is like, I'm so grateful I even have the chance to do this, right? Something that I would have normally been like, like I was just like, man, this is such an amazing opportunity to experience, just to be alive.
Simple things.
Yeah. So as I'm doing that, all of a sudden, I just hear a voice, and again through my body, say, come outside. But when I heard that, at the same exact time, like a number of things went on.
You hear this in English, right? I'm assuming.
Yes, it was in English. And again, I didn't just hear it, I felt it. There's a visceral quality to it.
Is there an accent to it?
It's hard to explain.
Like straight generic English, right?
It wasn't generic.
Like because English is like British, right? That's like proper English,
it wasn't like that.
So it's like modern English.
However it was communicated or generated in my mind, it was completely normal to me. So it wasn't like a New Yorker accent, like, hey, come outside. Yeah. But it was very. I didn't question that at the time. I wasn't thinking like,
you were just like, wow.
But at the same time, the second or the moment that I heard the voice, I knew exactly what was going on, and I saw an image of these two entities, right, that look completely human in like almost like spacesuit kind of thing. And, I say blonde hair, blue eye to point to a complexion. I don't know if they actually had blue eyes, but that was the very light complexion like that.
Got it.
And
this is when you're outside. So you went outside.
No, I'm still inside.
Got it.
I'm still inside, and I hear this voice, but as soon as I heard the voice, I saw these entities, right, in my mind. Because my eyes were still open, but I could still see this. again, it's really hard to describe. And I knew what was going to happen. So, and I can't explain to you how or why or anything, but I just knew this, right? Like without a doubt. And so I ran outside, and as soon as I get out the door, there's like trees or whatever. So I'm kind of running past that so I can look up into the sky, because I know that I'm going to look up and there's going to be this UFO there. I knew it. And as I'm like, before I even get out of the trees to look up into the sky, I heard this low hum. It's like vroom, vroom, vroom. And it's very like bassy, and I felt it in my body. And again, from the point where I heard the voice and saw the image of these entities and everything, I was locked on. They call it a telepathic lock on in some kind of vernacular, but my consciousness was locked onto theirs, if that makes sense. Okay. Some people will say like a mind meld or something. Like I felt as far as I can tell, I felt that I can feel their feelings and their consciousness, and it was like some kind of weird connection was happening.
Okay.
And so when that happened, still, even when I'm inside, I'm having what people call like a Kundalini experience, right? Like I feel elated, right? I feel like very super excited and happy and almost like giddy, and physically almost like like it's not just like a soft emotion. I could feel it through my whole body. And when I ran out and I heard this like low humming, it's like vibrating through my body. And it was and I get past the trees and I look up and I see this like a metal craft that's like almost like a hexagon, except the edges were not straight, they were like rounded off. Okay, and it had this white, completely square white light fixture and different color lights going around the edges, like bleeding around the edges in a circle. And I'm like freaking out, like, but I'm elated. I'm like super excited, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, in my mind, like this is the most amazing thing. And I have this Kundalini kind of experience thing going on. And I run down these stairs that are there and into my driveway, and I look up and I'm following it, like making sure I don't trip while I'm kind of, running down or whatever. And this thing is like not far above the trees. Like I felt like I could have just hit this thing and it would have went thunk, like it was there. And then all of a sudden, it's moving along and it just disappears and then reappears maybe like 1,000 or 1,200 feet that over this man-made lake that was there across the street. And I'm just like, again, elated, but I'm also thinking at this point, did I hit my head so hard in that car accident the other day that I'm imagining this? Like, what? Sure. Like that at this point, I'm starting to think like, is this really happening? Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's too much. It's just like, again,
a lot to take in.
They told me to come outside, and there's this freaking UFO here and I saw these entities, and they're kind of emitting this like kind of loving connection. And I hate to sound new agey and shit, but that was my experience. And they communicated that they're related to us somehow, and that they want people to know they're here and all this stuff, right?
They gave you a message.
A download. It's a download, so it's not just like you're hearing words. It's just like boom, you're hit.
All of a sudden, you just knew this.
Correct, but there's also, during this experience, there's a very physical feeling to all this, right?
Sure, but afterwards, you were like, "Oh, I got this message."
This is why I was saying, am I supposed to take this literally? Because but so this is happening, and I'm like, did I hit my head so hard that I'm just imagining this? Because this is insane, right? That this is happening right now. So I ran in my house, and I had 2 family members there, and I said, guys, come outside. They're like, why? I said, they're here. And they said, who's here? I said, just come outside. So 2 of my family members came outside, and they were watching these crafts. At that point, there were 3 of them, and they're just moving across the sky with the lights going around like this, and this was going on for minutes. And in my mind, I'm thinking like everybody must be seeing this because this is at like maybe 9:30 at night in the summer. So I'm thinking like this is disclosure happening right now. Like in my mind, for some reason, I thought
Like
that
we're being invaded. Like
Well,
this is happening.
I didn't think invaded,
Maybe
but
invasion, but
like I thought that
Shown.
this is like a world
a
disclosure. That
reveal,
somehow
a
everybody knew that
worldwide
this event
reveal.
was going on.
Yeah.
Because how could they
Interesting.
not see this, right?
Interesting.
Because it was so apparent to me, I guess. And my family members saw the crafts moving around, and the way that this whole kind of event ended, after maybe 20 minutes of these crafts moving through the sky, disappearing, and another one appearing, and the way the whole thing ended, where there's 2 of them, and they're going towards each other like this in the sky, and the lights are going around like this, and as soon as they're about to make contact, I'm thinking in my head, holy shit, they're going to crash. As soon as they made contact, boom, they just disappeared, and it was over. Like the show was over, that's it. And I'm just like completely
done. Like turn off a TV.
Like, wow, like I'm just blown away. Like again, the daylight sighting was incredible, but again, it wasn't just a sighting, it was the string of events that led up to it, right?
Sure.
But then I had the trauma-induced OBE, out-of-body experience, or almost that simulated near-death experience, right?
Yeah.
And then this, like, just boom, 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 like just freaking.
And this is in the middle of the day too?
No, this was
This one's
nighttime.
at night.
This
is
one,
at night.
when they said come outside, it was maybe 9 or 9:30 p.m.
That's right.
on a
You
summer-
said
on a
that. So
summer night.
that's summer nights are dusky around that time. So it's pitch dark or what?
It was.
Not sure
I mean,
where.
the sky was clear. I could see stars and stuff.
Oh, okay, got it.
And
got it,
I'm
got
out
it.
in Westchester, New York, so we have
Yeah.
a pretty clear sky up here.
Sure, I know that area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful area.
Okay. Yeah, beautiful area.
so-
Definitely clear skies.
Yeah, and so this event pushed me over the edge as far as like I'm on a mission now. And some people will say, is that intentional on behalf of the UFO phenomenon to kind of tap people to do their bidding? I don't know. I don't want to say it like that, but to communicate the awareness of their presence. I don't know. Is that the point of the interactions? I don't know. But
I want to know what this
I have to
download
consider it.
is. I think anyone watching is like, well, what did they tell you?
So again,
You know what I mean?
all these kind of things came flooding into my awareness or my head or whatever, again, that they're related to us and they want people to know about them and that whole kind of thing. And then
I don't know that whole kind of thing. I don't know what that means.
It's
Like,
so hard to describe because when people say a download, like a download, it's
well,
like
I've been looking into that a little bit with Tim Taylor, Chris Bledsoe, some of that.
Grant Cameron is a great
Terrence,
source on that. Yeah.
Grant Cameron. Yeah, I had Grant Cameron on. We
I
talked
saw
about
it.
that.
Yeah. Grant Cameron.
Yeah.
He's somebody who's like a conduit for this kind of thing. That's why he's able
Townsend
to just,
Brown, right? Getting downloads. So like,
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I understand that.
Gary Nolan.
Gary Nolan. So
right.
I'm just curious what was in the download. Like, okay,
Yeah.
so they're related to us and they want us to know they're like here in peace.
So that was the feeling I got. And this is when it gets to the thing about literal.
Because they didn't hurt you in any way. Right?
No. I mean, to
this
me,
nighttime experience, they didn't hurt you. They didn't harm you. They didn't threaten you.
No, it felt like super loving, super caring, super.
Even that psychic connection, you didn't feel hurt by that. Like that wasn't painful.
It felt like I was perceiving reality on a higher dimension or vibration, and that it was. Again, like people describe a Kundalini experience, it's like very physically pleasant. It's elating. It's like high energy. It's like a very positive
drug-like
buzz.
Not drug. Clearly,
right, but it's very visceral.
Euphoria.
But there's this enhanced. I mean, I can't say enhanced because I don't know, but this level of clarity and appreciation and gratitude and all this kind of stuff that goes along with like higher states of consciousness and stuff.
Was there any predictions in their download to you? Like
I had other dreams that involved seeing things, but again, in different capacities. Like one was I saw like almost I saw it's like a vision of almost like a pre-nuclear war thing, and I don't want to say the country, but somebody was yelling, "We're going to war with X. We're going to war with X," and it turns out that's like an adversarial country, and I didn't know that at this time, like that was a thing, really, because but it could have been floating in my subconscious. I don't know. But then I also had again.
Have you seen that happen?
It's the way that I heard that then and didn't have kind of a context for it, and the way where I see things now, it's like, wow, that's like right.
It's
fucking
there.
right on
It's
the money.
Close. It's like
it could happen.
Got to be Russia or China. I mean, I'm not trying to, but like, I mean, okay.
I don't want to say what it is, or it's
sure,
but because I don't want to get into this nationalistic thing and us them, because I think this whole thing should unite us. I think that should be the focus. Agreed. So I don't want to put out that kind of idea that we're going to go to war with anybody, because I think that
for sure
this thing should unite us, and this should be an opportunity for us. I think disclosure should be an opportunity for us to come together as a society, as a world, and see our commonalities, right? And sometimes I even question, like, is this whole idea of them being a threat something to pull us together, right? So we have no other choice, right?
The threat thing is scary to people. I don't know if that's the right approach. I get that it can get you money from Congress.
There is no right approach. There is no right approach because
that's a good point.
Because we don't know. But so the approaches that we have to discover, I just got
vetted, and you're right. And there's an extra thumbs up just to let people know how serious I am about that.
Yeah.
Yes. No. I agree with that, actually.
Well, I want to get back to this thing about literal, right? Because if these messages
we're gonna answer this question in this podcast, okay? Today, it's gonna happen.
Patrick is very good at stringing people along to keep them tuned in. Other than his good looks and that hair in the background,
I love it.
He's got a strategy. No, but I love that poster too. You got a dope background. Man, I wish I had a dope background like that.
The X-Files, bro. Come on.
The whole background, the lighting and everything.
No, cool. Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
As far as podcasts go or video shows, you're a phenomenon.
I love it.
An anomalous phenomena.
I love it.
No, but so if I'm to take all this stuff, like I wasn't questioning, are these extraterrestrials, and did this really happen, and is everything that they communicated absolutely true? I wasn't even thinking that. I was just taking it like at face value at first.
Sure.
And so I assumed that I knew everything that's going on in town with this UFO stuff. I assumed I had. It wasn't even a conscious decision. I just assumed I knew because I had this experience, and that's why I empathize with other experiencers who think that they understand it. But I think not everybody, because there's a ton of people in the community who are humble, but a lot of times you don't hear from them because they are too humble, and they have a great contribution to make. So that's my kind of invitation for experiencers to come out and share their experiences, so I can step in the back again. And
well, people have been telling me to have more experiencers on and talk about these things more.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too. And this is the beginning of that. And that's why I really was excited to talk to you about this, because I do want to do more of this.
Yeah. Well, but you also need the military encounter stuff. You need the hard science data. You need, what SCU is doing. You need
it's a balance, right?
You need everything. It's going to take everything that we have to even scratch the surface of what's going on here. Well, and I think that Dr. Gary Nolan and others of course, Lou Elizondo are trying to facilitate that conversation through what they're doing. Christopher Mellon, credit. These people don't have to be doing any of this stuff. Like Gary Nolan is like, he's the guy's beyond self-made, right? Sure. He could just be doing his thing at Stanford instead of coming out of the closet, as he did literally and both ways. and not have to deal with any of this stuff and just do it privately with the Invisible College and not have any kind of thing. But they're trying to push the conversation forward and get things done, in my opinion.
I think most people generally in this community, at least at the minimum, we should all agree that they've at least helping move the conversation along, bringing the conversation to the forefront. People
Right.
are talking about it, right? They're trying something. It may not be working. You may not agree, but at least
well,
we're
and
talking.
they're
It's
not a
out there.
monolith either, right? They all
Yeah,
have their own
exactly.
beliefs. They have their own opinions. They have their own approaches. They have their
I
own
agree.
ethics, right? Then they have their own strategies, right?
I agree. 100%.
And that gets into this huge mix where like it just comes out the way it does because everybody's doing their thing, right? At the end of the day.
Totally agree.
But again, so these experiences I was taking so literally, and I had to stop and say, what is going on here? And what am I supposed to just
look back?
Yeah. And thankfully I had been practicing meditation for many years and contemplation and vichara, inquiry practice and stuff. So I was like, wait a second, like in Buddhism, they emphasize like analysis, right? Like, why are you thinking these thoughts? Where are they coming from? And you're kind of tracing it back to the origin of the thought, right? Or an emotion, right? It's vipassana, and there's all different contemplative traditions that you're getting to the root of the source of thought and emotion and cause and effect, right? Of even those subtle things. But so I was like, these experiences, am I just interpreting in that way, or is that exactly how it happened? Or is the UFO phenomenon facilitating that experience the way, like, did they tailor it to my expectations, to my beliefs, or are they just completely trying to mislead me, right? I can't answer any of those. I can give my honest opinion.
Is it a personalized ad, or
because you'll
That's
notice
interesting.
why are all these experiences so different, right? Why do do they tailor to our beliefs and our expectations? Or are these actually just different entities in some of these different interactions, or is it one intelligence that's kind of doing?
Yeah,
because I can go into so many different tangents with you right
I
now,
bet.
Patrick, because after all that, I got into CE5 and contact work because I wanted to do something proactive. And I realized through those experiences, after having those experiences, that the only way that people are going to get this, and again, I'm not saying this from like a touted, I'm an experiencer, so I know kind of personality view trait.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the ontological shock, right? Like the really heavy lift where like you're not speculating anymore. You know that there is some other intelligence because you experienced it firsthand. On that level, when that happens, you are no longer the same person. And all these different things just click, right? It's a paradigm shift, right? Which is so. I realized that I could tell people about experiences all day. I could tell people to study this UFO stuff and that stuff, and it's going to have an effect, right? It will have an effect, but it doesn't have that same transformational quality that I experienced, and I'm sure that anybody who has an encounter experiences. And what Dr. John Mack wrote about as the passport to the cosmos, in his book Passport to the Cosmos, is that it's like, once you have an experience like that, it's your passport into a much greater reality that you can't even comprehend the vastness of it. That's like your first taste. That's like the gateway drug into like all these other dimensions of reality that are simultaneously coexisting here at the same time, and that we're not just observers of it, we're participants in it. And that's a key of the interaction thing. So I'll leave that at that. That we're participating. And if you want to get into the kind of work that's been done on that, is John Wheeler at Princeton University had something called PAIR, and that was an investigation into consciousness and its effect on physical reality through random number generators, and people's expectations and thoughts and intentions were able to affect random number generators to a measurable degree. So people's thoughts and expectations affected how the numbers would generate. Yeah. So, and that's Princeton University, man. So you can try to say it's pseudoscience all you want, but
I'm going to try that with the lottery.
John,
That's
let's do a collective experiment.
Right. I'm in. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
I remember in a Jesse Michaels video, I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah, of course.
But he went and visited this guy, and they had something like that where it was like this light that changed colors. And
Adam Curry. Yeah. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
You know what I mean? And he would think about the light and it went to that color.
Yes.
And then they had something with numbers, but it wasn't a random number generator. It was like maybe I can't remember.
That you're talking about Adam Curry, and he's very heavy on the consciousness research end. So he's a pioneer in that regard. And this is the very tip of the iceberg. And
I mean, that was interesting, like
this is an important
being able
part
to manifest, or
but
like
this is exactly an important part of slide 9.
Doesn't that prove we're in a simulation?
So simulation is just a modern framework of theology. So people might not like that, but that's
interesting.
Well, because and I think simulation theory is very cool, and I appreciate the contribution it has to the way that we can look at the implication, right? So what a simulation implies that there's somebody who designed it, right? So that's why I say it's a modern framework of a new modern theology, because it is a kind of theology in that sense, but it's just a modern scientific sounding approach to it. I mean, but I think that the people that had the ancient theologies too were onto something, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, sometimes people buy into simulation theory and think it's something new, and it's not, right? It's saying the same thing.
Well, computer simulation theory, right?
But it's saying the same thing. Right?
It is. Overall, the theme is the same. You're right.
Correct.
Like the genre, if you will.
We're just changing some of the verbiage.
That's true.
Through modern technological framework, like we've done the same thing with the UFO phenomenon.
Sure.
Because the whole, in the essence of Buddhism and all these other ancient traditions are saying that we are living in an illusion, right? Yeah. They say the same exact thing. And Riz Verk, who wrote the book, The Simulation Hypothesis, has said the same thing, which is an excellent book. You should have Riz on to talk about simulation hypothesis.
I would love to talk about that.
He's a great dude. And
sure.
Yeah.
Well, he was just on
Joe Rogan.
Just on Rogan. I saw that. Yeah, I covered that. It was awesome.
Yeah. I had him on that. Yeah.
I'm into the simulation thing.
I had him on one of my my podcasts. I think I had another side podcast for a while. I was doing more of consciousness stuff, but I just ended up doing it here. But he was on that. So
yeah, I would love to talk to him about that. I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by that theory, but more fascinated by what you're kind of bringing up, which is it's an iceberg. There's more when you talk about simulation theory. It's like, it's this, and then it's, you know what I mean? There's all this other things.
And I'm not undermining any of it, but I'm just like,
no, of course.
That's me being very zen and saying,
because at the end of the day,
making it very simple
by saying, right, you don't know, right? We don't know,
right?
So
we don't know.
We're just talking.
I'm bringing a very kind of zen attitude, simplifying it,
sure.
Which is, again, it's very zen, but it's simplifying things to the lowest common denominator.
Sure.
But the idea that our consciousness or our awareness and our intention can interact with reality on some level, even if it's minute, even if it's so minute.
Sure.
But the thing is, can we amplify that with technology, right? Can we direct it with technology? Is that what the UFO phenomenon is doing? And is that what some of these crash retrieval programs are looking at? Right. We didn't even get into all that, man. we didn't even get into the CE5 stuff, because I found CE5 after I had those experiences, because
And for those that don't know, C5 is close encounter of the fifth kind. Right. So this is past. This is making a mental connection with a UFO.
Kind of,
Is
yeah.
that how you would describe that?
Right. So it's a proactive or interactive quality to contact. So you have the basic close encounters, but what makes close encounters of the fifth kind different is that it's intentional, right? And or it's interactive, because even people that study CE5 don't know that there's different degrees of it. There's a CE5 of the second degree, which is that you see a UFO, you happen by random chance to see a UFO, and then you're looking at it, right? Like I did randomly, right? Random, which I don't think that was, and you think something, and the UFO now is reacting to your thoughts. That's an interaction, and that's a CE5 of the second degree. CE5 of the first degree is when you yourself or with a group go out and request and invite. Because people say summoning.
That's interesting.
That's the wrong attitude. Nothing's being summoned. You're asking, right? Okay. You're not telling the UFO phenomenon to do anything. They're going to come if they want to, kind of thing, right? So when people use the word summon, that
makes sense. That's a good distinction.
It's just something. It's a word that's been used and popularized.
I probably said it, but I don't know what I don't know what I'm saying, right? Like,
no, it's not that you don't know what you're saying. It's just something that's commonly used. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't like the connotation.
I see your distinction.
Yeah, I think it's important to be clear on those aspects, because it's an invitation. That
changes it completely. You're right.
It does.
It really, totally makes it different.
Because if you go out and you say, I'm going to summon a UFO.
Well, it's the power dynamic.
Right.
So who's really in control here?
Yes, correct. And also, it's the attitude and the spirit in which you do it in. Because if you're going out to summon orbs, good luck. If you're going to go invite the UFO phenomenon for an interaction, politely, right? You're much more likely to get some kind of response too.
Now, I've famously said on the show here that I won't do CE5. In fact, I want to give a shout out to two of our mods who are part of the channel, Ali and Justin. They practice CE5. I'm all for it. They're great if you want to look into it more. But I've always said, like, I'm scared of, like, I don't know what these beings are. Why am I going to ask them to come interact with me?
I started, so when I first got into CE5, I was like super pro CE5, right? Like, why not? Because I thought, like, everybody should have this experience. But again, you don't know what you're going to get. And I made videos on this before on my channel. You could have the most beautiful CE5 experience, and it could mess you up if you're not ready for it. Even if the contact was super positive and awesome, you could be like, why the F am I working this meaningless job? Why am I with my partner, right? I should be doing this 24/7, whether it's research or I should be getting the truth out, or I'm just a meaningless drop of nothing because there's all these other intelligences. It's like, why am I even here? So, and this could also happen on people on an awakening and spiritual journey, right? They call it the Dukanyana, the dark night of the soul. Some people, it could just enhance them and they can have a great outcome from it, and it's awesome. But you don't know until you're there what's going to happen. And then, even if you have a positive experience and you're like, this is great, and you try to explain it to your partner, right? They could just be like, I didn't sign up for this, and if they have a different fundamental view of reality or religious view, I've seen it in different ways, break up long-term partnerships, and it's pretty devastating.
You make some great points. I mean, really, you do.
And everything was well-intentioned and positive. The contact was
100%.
seemingly positive.
That's even more dangerous, isn't it? Because it seems you're more likely to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, and I was pulled into everything. So it's like I almost feel like I I don't want to say I didn't have a choice, but yeah, I didn't really. I mean, as far as I know, some people speculate, well, you subconsciously decided to participate. I don't know. As far as I know, there was no agreement or something. I was just thrust into it. I'm grateful for everything that I've been through, right? Even the near-death experience. I wouldn't be the same person without it. And in my opinion, it changed me in a lot of ways for the better.
Very good.
But for some people, that may not be the case. Maybe in the long term, yeah, I don't know, but you don't know what's going to happen. You might have the intention to have a UFO experience, and you do, and when you do, you open up this whole kind of psychic dimension. And even though the UFO experience is positive, now you're seeing entities or ghosts or having crazy dreams, or maybe it opens something else up that you're not prepared for. You didn't have in your awareness that this is going to happen, right? Like the Skinwalker Ranch, Skinwalker effect, and the hitchhiker effect, and all that. Like once you open that door, be ready to have an open door, right? You unlock the door. So again, that's interesting. You could have nothing but pleasant and positive and great experiences.
Do you still practice CE5 now to this day?
I do. I used to do it too much, right? Like I had an extreme, like I if there was like a level of, they say you do something 10,000 hours. Like if there was a level of like a scale of CE5, I'd definitely be on the level where it's like a professional level. Like,
yeah,
I was doing it daily for years.
The aliens were like, "Hey, dude, stop, James.
F off.
Okay, yeah,
F
off. Okay,
okay. Like we didn't sign up for this. We just wanted to, no, but
funny.
I
get it. Were you just getting a rush off of this connection?
I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn through the interactions. I wanted to.
Were you getting downloads every time you were having the CE5 experience, or just sometimes?
It's again, when you get into the download things, it's not all apparent. Like it's not all like I see a UFO and automatically I have all these thoughts, right? It's not always like that. You can have a UFO sighting, and it could take you weeks to unpack what actually happened, right? Months.
Interesting.
And you're just suddenly having these different realizations of boom, oh wait, this, and then it's not linear, as people say linear, non-linear, and all that stuff. It's not always obvious in that way. Sometimes it absolutely is, but there's other
that
times.
Makes sense, right? If
where
it's
like
different.
It's just all of a sudden one day something unlocks, and when you're participating seriously in CE5, and that door's open, you could just walk outside one day without doing any of the CE5 protocols or practices, and boom, you're kind of in the mix now. So they're there, and you're like, holy shit. And I want to point out to people that CE5 people are going to be familiar with that term from Dr. Stephen Greer. He coined it in the 1990s.
Correct.
And I went out with Stephen Greer on a few expeditions, but he didn't create contact in that manner. He designed the CE5 protocols, but CE5 itself is not contained just to those protocols. Okay, that's one important thing.
He has his protocols and his.
There was a group in Lima, Peru called Mission Rama that was doing the same thing in the 1970s, and I have videos on this on my channel where they had video footage.
Mission Rama.
Yeah, Mission Rama.
Okay.
They had two different spellings: Rama and Rahma. And again, I have some videos on my channel where they invited journalists and they said, "Hey, there's going to be contact on this day." We had a program sighting. So Rama would do similar. They do meditation, and they used automatic writing, which is when you just like let your hand write, and then they would start to write down messages that came from another intelligence.
Venga, por favor, venga. Mire, hazme caso y vamos allá, por favor. Allá ve usted. Hermanita, por favor. Vamos a centrarnos en un lugar, ¿se dan cuenta? Póngase a hacer en medio.
There's a whole interesting and compelling history to Mission
Rama.
Rama and six topaz wells that people should look into, and I've done videos
That's
on.
interesting.
But you can. There's a
You
whole
know,
thing to
Rama
that.
means branch.
Well, they, six
Is
topaz
that how they're
wells
meaning it?
was six top. I think he was sun, Ra for sun, and M Ma for earth. The sun and the earth. They had this. They just like CE5.
Yeah, but that is
and the
interesting in Spanish. Rama does mean branch, like branching out, right? Like
right. They could have meant that too.
Connecting, right?
But the way they describe it was also, they specifically
I see what
described
you
it
mean.
as the sun and the earth, and
Sure.
H. They added the H later for humans, so humans are bridging. They got a little culty, okay, like
Got
a lot
it.
of these groups, right? That of course they have.
What if
all
Rama? That's where that comes from. That's why it's called a branch, because it's like connecting with the gods, like, and that's why.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, that sounds.
I love
like
language.
I love language, but that's I would
probably a stretch.
I would think that the language predates any of this. Yeah, but that.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so-
mean, we had to give that word a meaning, right?
Right.
When they were naming branch in Spanish in Peru, they were like, okay, Rama, because it's in every Spanish country. This is
Latin.
honestly, yes. Well, Latin, Spanish-speaking country,
Yeah.
right? Honestly, this is a tangent. It's not worth getting into, but just language and the way it goes down, because not every Spanish-speaking country uses the same language for everything, right?
Yeah,
Bilingual.
right.
So,
right. There's
like, it's all
context,
different. So,
dialect.
the fact that they use Rama in all of them is interesting, meaning that's a pretty old Spanish word that's still carried out, but it is interesting how they gave words their meaning, like what that meant, and then did it come from something like that? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
beyond
Riffing.
that. Anyway, I'm riffing. It's a bad riff. It's like when a guitarist did a solo and everyone's like, dude, that was bad. I just did a bass solo. Basically, no one.
I don't know
No one
much
cares
about
about
music,
bass solos. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone that does knows we just had a bass solo. I
Yeah.
just had a bass solo. Anyway, please continue.
Well, no, it's important to note here with Mission Rama that they were doing the same, not exact, but more or less the same exact thing that Stephen Greer is doing, but they called it program sighting. So they would get messages and be told the date and time and location of where a sighting or an encounter would take place, and they would have an interaction. So they invited journalists to come out one night, and they said at this date, this location, there's going to be a UFO sighting, so we're going to go there. And it ended up happening the day after, but there were mainstream journalists in Peru that got video footage of one of these sightings, and this is in I think the actual video footage is maybe from the 80s, 70s, or 80s,
and there's footage of it.
Yeah, and it's clearly an anomalous thing. It's not there's no drones back then doing that, and if there is, like, that's a classified program basically.
Sure.
So, and if they knew the time and location psychically of a classified program, that's just as cool in my opinion in some way. But so that happened. They got video footage. They're doing the same thing as Greer. So CE5 as a whole is not just the CE5 protocols. Although the CE5 protocols, if people are interested, they work, right? It more or less, they're good training wheels. It's a good guideline for people to use and practice with. It's like a foolproof way that you can have an interaction with UFO intelligence if you're open to that, or what have you. Again, if you did your whole disclaimer thing and realize that you're gonna, the people that are just gonna do it are just gonna do it, right? Like
100%.
So,
absolutely.
But for the people who are wary, if you're wary about it, don't do it, right? We don't need, it's not for everybody. Just like meditation isn't for everybody, or bass solos is not for everybody.
Yeah.
It is
Good
what it
callback.
is, So I'll put a disclaimer, but at the same time, if people are going to do it, they're going to do it. And
100%. I recommend people. I tell people all the time, hey, I don't want to do it, but if you do, go check out X, go here, go there, for sure.
I think
go
we
for
need
it.
people to do it on some level, right? It's another path of inquiry. It's another,
Interesting.
path of learning about the UFO phenomenon, right? You're not researching a cold case that happened last week or yesterday, whatever. It's a living, laboratory. You're interacting in real time, and that's an amazing opportunity. So, that there's that whole thing, and a lot of people don't want to look at CE5 because it's associated with Dr. Stephen Greer, and I completely understand that. That's justified to some point, but then they think it's all bunk just because it's associated with him, and that's not necessarily the case. So,
I mean, I heard some story like he, was putting out flares and it wasn't real, and don't believe this guy.
Right,
and
right.
I thought,
So
well,
let's
I don't
address
know.
that. Let's address that. I can't speak for that event. I wasn't there. I saw the video. The video looks like flares, right? Is he the one who did that? I don't know if he's the one that kind of paid somebody to go by and drop flares. Did that happen? I don't know. Is it possible? Certainly. But I can tell you that I have been to two of his events after I had my experiences, and there were genuine anomalous phenomena that occurred at those events. Was that because of with the other participants that were there were the reason it happened, or was it because of him that was there that it happened? Was it just because everybody was kind of intending for it to happen that UFO intelligence decided to interact? I don't know. But I can say that at the two events that I went to, one was a 3-day and one was a week-long one, there were anomalous, genuine phenomena that he could not have faked, right? For sure. And I've done my way too much of my own experimentation to know that it does work in that regard.
Sure.
But I also want to make the point that so many people don't realize this. Some people are newer, or some people just they have so much disdain for Dr. Stephen Greer that they don't want to admit it.
He's a divisive figure in this.
He is, and
sure.
and I'll tell you that his conduct and his personality, he's burned a lot of people. But he was definitely a persona non grata. The guy was having literal meetings with a sitting director of the CIA for President Clinton, while it was the sitting director. It wasn't a retired CIA director.
Yeah.
He was the sitting director, and that meeting happened, and people dispute it, whatever. John Greenwald of the Black Vault had Woolsey on, and Woolsey said, yeah, we had the meeting. So even though Woolsey made a letter and signed it saying it never happened, like Greer said, he's blowing out of proportion. Years later, he came out and said, yeah, the meeting kind of happened. Why is a sitting CIA director going to meet with a random UFO researcher who's claiming to have contact? Come on.
Plus, his documentaries are great.
And he has the letter inviting him to go to the dinner party, right? So it's clear that Woolsey wanted to meet with him to talk about UFOs. Bottom line, but
he released some files in an archive. I mean, he's open to everybody.
Like the best and the worst of the community. I have to say, he was way ahead of his time.
Sure.
But again, I do want to get to that, but to his disclosure stuff. But I want to say that people don't realize that in the 1990s, he was the Chris Bledsoe of the 1990s. Like, there were people. Yeah, people don't realize that, right? Like, but the difference is
Dr. Greer could summon orbs and
invite, right? So
sorry,
come on,
right.
Patrick. No,
you're right. You just told me too.
No,
you just told me.
No, but I knew I was connected to his inner circle, for better or worse. So I knew the people that were with him in the 90s and stuff. One of them was Dr. Joseph Burks, who I've interviewed maybe 4 or 5 times on my channel. He'll be back on again. He was part of the CSETI core team. Dr. Stephen Greer's original organization was the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And with that, he was doing the CE5 stuff before he got into the disclosure stuff. But during that time, people would say you couldn't go anywhere with Dr. Stephen Greer without seeing a UFO, right? Same kind of thing that's going on with Chris Bledsoe now. And the intelligence community took note, right?
Of Dr. Stephen Greer.
Yes. The reason
that's what makes Chris Bledsoe so interesting, right? Is that he's like considered the most investigated
Stephen Greer
person.
was at the time.
That's
the reason,
see, I didn't know this.
Right. So the reason that
interesting.
Greer got the meeting with the sitting CIA director, James Woolsey, was because he did a CE5 event on the coast of Florida by Gulf Breeze. And they recorded these UFOs. And there's a video you can see. I can send it to you. It's an old 1990s video, so the quality is not good, but it's clearly these lights in a perfect triangle and then another one coming in, right? You can see them forming into a triangle, right?
Sure.
They are moving closer. Yeah, he went in the same signal. Watch.
Oh my God.
There it goes. 1, 2, 3. There it goes. See? See? Yes.
Far out. Oh.
We have a confirmed CE5.
It's almost a perfect 90-degree triangle. A right triangle.
Look at that star.
Yeah, they are making a triangle. Now. Oh, look! Did you see it do that? It's like, look, the top one. They're signaling. They are floating towards us, friends. Send them thoughts of peace, and we welcome them here. There are 3 there. I have confirmed that there are 3. Do we?
Got him. I've got him. And look, there's 4. There's 4. There's 4. Holy damn hot shit. Dog.
Thank you.
All right, said that.
Thank you.
Hallelujah.
Close.
Hallelujah. Come to me.
And this guy's like, holy damn hot shit. There's a bunch of people there. There's witnesses. It was in the newspaper the next day. And there were 2 people there from a Navy base that were in the audience, that were there participating in this event. So they reported it to their commander, said, hey, we're at this CE5 CSETI event with this Dr. Stephen Greer, and these UFOs showed up. And again, these are trained observers from a Navy base. They reported it to their commander, Commander Will Miller, who ended up being his military advisor. And this guy was somebody who ran unacknowledged special access programs. This guy had the connects in the DOD and the Pentagon. He ran special access programs. That's why Greer became so well versed, right? But he got those meetings because he got those people's attention, right? And he was approached by people in the intelligence community the same way Chris Bledsoe was.
Does Stephen Greer have abilities like Bledsoe in the sense of being able to invite the beings to heal people and things like that?
So anytime you're talking about the UFO phenomenon and interactions, there's all that kind of high strangeness comes with it, right? Is it Chris Bledsoe that's doing that, or is it the phenomenon that's doing that, right?
Or whichever. Is it happening through Chris Bledsoe?
So there's stories like that from every experiencer that's like an experiencer like that. Dorothy Ezat, Stephen Greer, Chris Bledsoe.
So even Dr. Stephen Greer has had healing. He's been around.
Spontaneous healings are reported when doing CE5 work. And Dr. Joseph Burks wrote about that in a book by Ray Hernandez with the Free organization, which was the Foundation for Research into Extraordinary Experiences, which was the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation, which is now called CCRI, the Consciousness Research Institute. So, I mean, that's there. It wasn't highlighted as much, but if you go and read through the literature, people have reported during contact experiences that they're spontaneous healing, right?
Wow.
The difference with Stephen Greer was interacting with people in the intelligence community, in those days. I mean, he still is. That's the kind of problem, right? Is that he calls people like Lou Elizondo a disinformation agent, but the person that's feeding him information is a high-ranking CIA guy that we all know the name of. I don't want to say his name here, but
So do you think Dr. Stephen Greer has been misinformed this entire time, or when did the switch happen?
So that's the thing. So that's the thing, right? Who's to say? How long has it been in effect? Did he make an agreement to do something? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. Are there different people in the intelligence community telling him different things? Right.
It's just very bold for him to say Lou Elizondo is a disinformation
anybody
agent, instead of he could be thinking it, but keeping quiet about it.
He didn't supply any evidence of that. I'll say that.
It's an odd.
It's odd, but it's also how much of that is just Stephen Greer being Stephen Greer, because
that's what I mean.
He has a huge
is that
ego.
What it is?
He has a huge ego, and he has a tendency for people that don't agree with his viewpoints to say they're working. They've been co-opted by the CIA. They're being misled. Hey. You know what? Maybe he's right, but he's not providing the evidence to back up those claims. And he had no evidence to back up that claim. He just said it. He used Danny Sheehan in a weird way. He kind of put Danny Sheehan in a peculiar position, and and but look where Danny Sheehan is standing now. That's all I could say.
Yeah, he's representing Lou. It's like
so for whatever that is,
Stephen Greer's mad about.
But I don't want to say like all Greer is distasteful. I mean, there's a history of him having not great interaction with different researchers.
Sure.
At the same time, we have to appreciate that this guy was. There was no question that he was being messed with by the intelligence community and people that did not want this out, and that he was meeting.
That probably happens to everybody, though, right?
No, not like this. Not like this. The guy, before any of this was safe, post 2017, this guy was having meetings with the sitting CIA director, right? The sitting J2 Thomas Admiral Wilson, who was the deputy DIA director, while in office, having meetings in his office in the Pentagon. The sitting DIA director, Patrick Hughes, while he's in office, while he's directing the office of the DIA, as a civilian, right? There's no way that he was not under surveillance, and that there was an effort to discredit and disinform him. There's no way. It's happening now when it's safe, right? When it's safe.
Sure.
So there's
it's
no
interesting that he didn't get involved with like Skinwalker Ranch in the 90s and like OSAP and like want to be a part of that, or maybe
that group didn't like him, and for that
maybe because he was trying to out them, because I mean James Lukatsky and Colm Kelleher are kind of definitely James Lukatsky. He didn't want that stuff to be public.
Right. So there's a history to that. And like you can say the Invisible College and Stephen Greer, and they did not like him for a number of reasons. Some justly so, and some because he was,
There's some personal stuff on both sides there, basically.
Yeah, but
right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's a whole podcast right there, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
But there's a history there, and some of that I actually don't want to get into. He's talked about it indirectly and made reference to when he was approached by somebody to become part of the program, but if he did so, that he would have to fold his program into theirs and not be able to publish it. That's a story he tells. The other parties deny it happening. I believe that did happen, just because Greer's never made up when a meeting happened. He has his own Greer twist on how the meeting happened, but
he's not just going to make up an entire.
But any meeting that he said happened has happened. That as far as I've researched and double checked and investigated. So the spin he puts on it, okay, but I think that did happen to some degree, and that's the difference with him and Chris Bledsoe. Even though a lot of people aren't going to like that, was Greer was not willing to play ball, and he basically gave them the big FU. And as far as I know, Chris Bledsoe is not the same. He's more cooperative, right?
Sure.
And for better or worse, and what is the effect of that? And I know Chris. I've spoken to Chris many times. He's a great guy. I'm not trying to say anything, but from what I understand, and it's a different day and age, and maybe he was approached by better people, but he's certainly more cooperative with the intelligence community than Stephen Greer was, to some extent. Again, because Greer will say this and this and that, but at the same time, he's still being influenced by people in the intelligence community, right?
Sure.
By people very high up in the CIA, or that were very high up in the CIA and held the keys to the UFO stuff in the CIA allegedly in the late 80s and early 90s by the CIA scientists that everybody knows who I'm talking about. If I'm not saying it here, somebody will drop it in the comments. I don't want to say it.
Wow. Okay. I'm so curious.
Is there going to be a real effect for me if I say his name? Probably not. I don't know, but this person has been known to literally mess with people on all different kinds of levels. Public, yeah, like the Bledsoes were threatened by this individual. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
all right. An 80s scientist that worked for the
late
CIA.
80s, the gentleman who ran the Weird Desk after Kit Green.
Got it.
Everybody knows what I'm talking. Okay. Don't say this. Yeah. So, yeah, he's messed with people, and
he's messed with me. I think
really?
if I'm thinking of the same person,
it might be. So, but that
yes.
that is what it is. So Greer is actually this person could be considered a shepherd to Greer, and most people don't realize that this person could be considered Greer's handler, because when Dr. Stephen Greer started receiving threats in the 90s,
wow.
and again, he says people started to die. People did die. I couldn't say if it was intentional and they were being targeted, or they just, coincidentally started dying. I don't know. But this person had offered Stephen Greer protection, and Stephen Greer first said no. And then when people started getting actually harmed, he said, just do it. Yes. And allegedly this person has been protecting him since 1997. And that's probably a good thing, right? I mean, we wouldn't have the Disclosure Project if that never happened. So it's really crazy. I mean, even me, I don't know what to make all
sword.
This whole thing, right? This whole disclosure thing, right? Everything we're seeing now, Stephen Greer helped facilitate this in the early 90s. So this is like 30 plus years in the making.
Yeah.
Stephen Greer played a big role in this. Right. For better or worse, he put Project Starlight, which became the Disclosure Project, which, that Stephen Greer gets all the credit for the Disclosure Project. And that's why a lot of people get pissed off, because there were other people that were really some of the main drivers behind that, like Dr. Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, the Apollo astronaut, Dr. Ed Mitchell. Leslie Kane, she won't talk about it, but she helped with some of those interviews. James Fox, those people were all involved in different ways.
Sure.
Like Greer used their footage in some of the interviews that they did for his Disclosure Project, but they didn't get credit. They didn't get the spotlight for it. And they're not going to talk about it because that's not them to do that. But that's yeah. I mean, so there's all this kind of stuff that happened back in those days and up until now, and it's a freaking mess. But that's humans, as Sean Cahill said, humans gonna human.
It's gonna human. That's it. That's so true.
But
well,
yeah.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think I'm gonna have to have you back again, James, at some point, because I think there's definitely a lot more to talk about. But this has been fascinating for me, to be honest with you, all of this. Is there anything you haven't finished or said that you wanted to before we sort of wrap up here? I want to make sure I didn't cut anything off, or we covered a lot.
Yeah, we covered so much, and I'm sorry. I went on my own tangents.
No,
you did some
great.
bass solos. I did some harmonica
I
solos. I did the harmonica solo, or whatever you want to call it.
Slap of the bass. For sure. No, yeah.
I mean, I would just, if I had to make some parting notes, I would say that I hope that this is a subject that can bring people together and bring out the best in people, because, you know, if we can't get this human shit right, how are we gonna do anything about non-human intelligence or the UFO phenomenon? And if you think that this is all a game and a manipulation by the intelligence community and that there is no phenomenon, then you're letting them win by mistreating people and arguing and bickering amongst each other. You're losing. They're manipulating you. So don't let them do that. If this is all fake and it's all space ghosts and all that, treat people better, because they need help. They need your help, and name calling them and all this bickering and nonsense and assaulting people verbally and doxing and all that shit. You're doing exactly what the intelligence community wants you to do if this is all fake. So don't play their game. Be better, because you can be. You know, that's when I see this subject, because for me personally has been a positive outcome, transformation, paradigm shift. For me, it's brought out the best in me, right? As far as I can tell, and as far as I hope, right? Maybe I'm not all that great, but you know what I mean? Like it's helped me have a more positive outcome and a more hopeful outcome. That if there's these other intelligence out there, wow, we're more similar to each other than we previously thought. If they made it, we can make it, right? It's a hopeful message, right? Disclosure and all that. In my opinion, we can advance science. We can advance just even our ethics, right? The way we see each other and treat each other. You know, if nothing else, like let that be the message that, like, you know, we have an opportunity to take on something all together, and it's going to take all of us. So let's use that opportunity before we don't have any more opportunities. At this rate, you know, I'm not being doom and gloom, but like if there was ever an opportunity for us to unite as a civilization or society, this is it, man. This is the calling card. Let's do it.
I couldn't agree more. To me, what's the point of advancing with technology if we can't even treat each other well? What's the point? If we're not advancing morally and ethically in our treatment of each other, what's the point of any other advancement? Right? That should be number one. Yeah. And then we can enhance our life with these other advancements. But if we can't learn how to treat each other right, what's the point of anything?
Yeah, because we're just going to destroy each other anyways at that point.
What's the point?
If we have some UFO reverse technology weapon and we just start using it, I mean, that's game over.
Game over, man. Yeah, I know. I couldn't agree more, man. We definitely
and also I mean, I don't want to get into another tangent, but you know, if we are targeting these UFOs without collectively deciding, hey, let's do this, and there's some rogue element within some government or corporation that's potentially instigating a conflict with non-human intelligence, people need to get a handle of that, because that could be a real problem for us too. So that's why, you know, I think there is a need for oversight. And I know I'm really like kind of like I could see the problem with too much oversight, in the sense where like they're just going to wrap it up and hide it up again. But we need transparency, right? So that has to come along with oversight, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, because even if there's oversight, there's still issues, right? So that's why transparency is key.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. Especially if we're shooting these things down. What are we starting? Like, what are we doing? Right.
And maybe, maybe all that's justified, but let us know what the hell is going on.
Yeah, what's the reason? Exactly. Maybe there is a good reason. Maybe
I don't
it's
know.
not what we think.
I don't know.
But
yeah. So,
for sure, I'm with you.
In any case, any way you spin it, we need transparency on it. And
well, we are part of the effect. There's another thumb to let you know again how serious I am about this too. We are in effect in the crosshairs of whatever retaliation there is from these beings if they don't like that we're shooting them down, right? Like,
Right.
we're you know what I'm saying? Like, what if all of a sudden they do something to it, they come in and invade, and then they're like, yeah, you were shooting us down, and we're all like, we didn't know that. I didn't shoot you down. I didn't know they were doing that to you. You know, like, what the hell?
Well, and that's the thing. What if it's not even the U.S. government per se that's doing it? It's just
or
one rogue group within it.
I mean,
and
absolutely.
It's like, who's to answer for
I mean, that's what I think it is. I don't think it's like, let's just, it's on the docket Tuesday afternoons, we shoot down UFOs. No, I do think it's some rogue A-team,
element,
faction element doing it, working with advanced aerospace companies, probably having their own. I think there's several doing their own thing, fighting, not getting along, different countries. I mean, what are we talking here? We got a global operation happening.
Well, and very much what David Grush said is there's been a Cold War going on. Basically, who can reverse this technology the fastest?
Totally. It's a race to get to the moon again.
Yeah.
It's a race to get the bomb built. It's a race to get, it's always a race.
Yeah. And the stakes, I mean, the stakes couldn't be higher, and
the stakes are the highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I'm with you, man. No, for sure. Well, look, this has been so fun and enlightening and moving and intriguing, fascinating to hear from you. I appreciate you being so open about your experience, your personal experiences, and how it's affected you. And I think people are going to be able to relate to some things you said, learn from some things you said and experienced. Very excited about this new book that you have coming out. I'm glad you were able to drop it here on Vetted First, that you're doing this thing. Very excited about that. And yeah, man, just super enjoyed this. So thanks for coming on the show.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, being a great host, and being open to listen and platform potentially controversial, or what have you. So thank you so much.
Oh, dude, of course, absolutely. We got to be able to talk about things.
Absolutely.
Right? We can't get anywhere if we can't do that.
Yeah.
So for sure. No, thank you, James. This was awesome. Real quick before we go, tell people how to. I'll put links in the description, of course. But how do you want people to stay in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on X, aka Twitter, on Engaging for Engaging the Phenomenon, YouTube on Engaging the Phenomenon, and podcasts on Engaging the Phenomenon, and usually Spotify is the best. I've been having issues with Apple. For whatever reason, I've tried to troubleshoot that. It's like a nightmare for me. But if you type in on Google James Iandoli or Engaging the Phenomenon, all my stuff is going to come up. I have a link tree, I have an Instagram, but YouTube and X is where I am most.
Awesome. And guys, of course, check the links in the description for that too. So if you can, open up the description of this video and you'll see all these links that he's talking about take you directly. But if not, do the Google search, like you said, and you'll find them. So again, thank you, James, for coming on Vetted, man. Can't wait to have you back on again.
Yes, sir. Talk to you again soon.